Hello and welcome to Hangout 38 with the International Force Rape Timeline. This is not a live hangout. It probably shouldn't be called a hangout either because it's been pre-recorded. I'm calling this particular instalment news and stuff. I've quite a bit to report on. I'm going to cover them various issues in not any particular order. The biggest issue at the moment is the arrest of Ghislaine Maxwell, or however her name is pronounced, and the ongoing Jeffrey Epstein scandal. As you may know, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested last year and either committed suicide or was murdered in a prison cell. I think probably it was suicide, but we will find it very difficult to convince many people of that, maybe most people. There were obviously things going on here that shouldn't have been going on, and there's no doubt that Epstein was doing things with underage girls he shouldn't have been doing. It's standard to call him a paedophile. He wasn't technically a paedophile. He wasn't somebody who was going around picking up 8-year-old kids off the street and fondling them. He was using underage girls. In Florida, the age of consent is 18. There's concrete evidence that he was using victims up 14 upwards for his services. Some suggested that 11-year-olds were some were 11 years old. I believe that one is hard evidence of it. Now, the real scandal here isn't so much what he was doing, but the fact that there appears to have been all sorts of chicanery behind the scenes. Donald Trump, as William Barr, Trump's Attorney General, appears to have been on top of that because something. That they sacked or reassigned an attorney in the Southern District of New York who was handling the New York end of the prosecutions. Now, while there was genuine sexual abuse going on here, you can't believe everything self-styled survivors say, especially not Virginia Roberts, Virginia Giuffre, the former Virginia Roberts. This woman is, by her own admission, I've made 2 videos on this, she's an admitted child sex trafficker. You know, she's admitted out of her own mouth. She didn't use it didn't say so in quite those words, but she admitted that she procured underage girls for Epstein. She's made allegations against Alan Dershowitz, which, having looked into them, I'm satisfied are false. Incidentally, Dershowitz has published a book, which I'll put the link below. You can download it for free. Guilty by accusation. And Roberts Giuffre has also continued to make ludicrous allegations against Prince Andrew. One more time. She may or may not have had sex with Andrew in London when she was 17. She was brought to London by Epstein. She was taken to an exclusive nightclub with him, where she rubbed shoulders with the rich and the famous, with rock musicians and the like. And afterwards, she probably had sex with Andrew, who denied it, maybe because he was shown having sex with a prostitute. She was not trafficked, okay? a 17-year-old in London, in England, where the age of consent is 16, who goes to a club voluntarily, drinks champagne, has sex with a member of the royal family and has paid for it, has not been trafficked. She is a prostitute, a harlot, a whore. That's the first thing. So don't believe anything this woman says, not without extremely strong corroboration. Over the next few days, certainly over the next few weeks, we'll see what else happens. But there's no doubt whatsoever that the allegations she's made against Andrew are false, against Dershowitz are false. You can find her writings on the internet, her handwritten so-called diary. She's refuted by chronology in some of them, and nothing she says is worthy of belief. And if Ghislaine Maxwell is to be indicted for child sex trafficking, so should Virginia Roberts be. Right, if you don't recognise this guy, his name is Justin Bieber. He's a singer-songwriter from Canada. Not my not exactly Al Stewart, and not melodic rock either, but he's been around since the age of, he's 26 now, he's been around since the age of 13, and as a lot of young men with money in their pockets and adoring female fans, he does things he didn't ought to do a lot of the time. That does not appear to be rape. He was accused of, he's been accused of rape on social media, and as I've said before, I'm not the first person to say this, the allegation of rape made on social media, on the internet, anywhere without a contemporaneous police report isn't worth anything. He's far from the first singer-songwriter to be forced to be accused like this. There's a case, Conor Oberst a few years ago. Bieber says he's published documentation which proves he wasn't where this anonymous accuser says he was. At the time, she says he raped her, and he's taking legal action. And I'm glad. This hashtag #MeToo nonsense has to be stopped. One more time, if a woman is raped, she should report it to the police and medical professionals, hospital, whatever. Not necessarily out of order, maybe simultaneously. I mean, I've just mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell. She's already been tried and convicted in the media. Lots of cases, not just allegations of sexual impropriety. People are convicted in the media. Back in 1983, I think it was, a judge in England, there was a guy on trial, Knight, his name was. He was going on trial for grievous bodily harm, and the judge wouldn't allow the trial to go ahead because he said the press coverage was so outrageous it would be impossible for him to get a fair trial. This sort of nonsense. People have to stamp down on this and stamp down on it hard. So that's false allegations against Justin Bieber. At some point, his anonymous accuser, because there's more than one now, will hopefully be held to account, or at least exposed. Right, the next person on the agenda is Bill Cosby. You may recall is doing 3 years to 10 for an imaginary. Well, I've done a full-length video. I actually did 2 videos on Cosby. The second one after he was convicted, the prior bad acts of glory are all read. See the link. It's on this. It's on Bitchute. He's been granted another appeal. and is claiming he was a victim of systemic racism. Give me a break. No. If anything, Cosby's race protected him because, again, I've written about this article I wrote for an Islamic website on victim narratives. The talking heads didn't know what to do when the allegations against Cosby started coming out in 2014, and it happened. I mean, this was the second wave, as it were. They were terrified. Do they side with the alleged victims and be branded racist, or do they side with Cosby and be branded rape apologists? And eventually, there were so many of these lying hags and demented women that they sided against Cosby. When the case came to court, you had these there was a trial and a retrial. The second retrial, there were 5 so-called victims of bad acts, evidence of prior bad acts. None of them had any credibility, especially Janice Dickinson. Yet Cosby was convicted of assaults on Andrea Constand, this white lesbian half his age he was supposedly mentoring. As if. But the whole Tom Mesereau, who also defended Michael Jackson, he did a pretty good job on this case, but they decided to play the race angle and arguing that Constant was on the take. I think it was just the fact that she's a screwed up woman. She reported the alleged assault months later. Now, again, if you check out the video, the live hangout about the three D's of false rape allegation: drink. 3 D's of false rape allegations: drink, drugs, and delay. You'll see this case had reasonable doubt written all over it. Cosby shouldn't be in jail. Gloria Allred should be in jail because not just on what she did on this case, but the Roy Moore case, which is absolutely outrageous. So check out the prior bad acts of Gloria Allred. I don't know what will happen with the Cosby case. He had very little sympathy from the Black Lives Matter crowd because he's because of his establishment, but and he's also anything but he's just opposed to everything they stand for. But the whole thing is ridiculous, and we've seen cases like this in the UK. Rolf Harris was a bigger entertainer in the UK as Cosby in the US. Rolf Harris is destroyed. In Australia, Harris is native Australia. A bloke with the same initials, Robert Hughes, was given a 12-year sentence because some stupid child actress went to America and came back with a head full of satanic conspiracies. Which brings us to the next person on the agenda. This is a guy called Jon Wedger, who is a former Metropolitan Police officer. We'll follow a short clip, just over a minute, of him talking with one of his lunatic friends. I'll play the clip and then I'll comment on it.
Please listen to what Jeanette's got to say, and you can see what this is doing. What was the farm, Jeanette?
The farm was a place where satanic ritual abuse happened week in and week out. It was where children and babies were raped, tortured, murdered, sacrificed, buried. children were abducted and brought there in vanfuls. Children were held captive in underground tunnels. There were a number of barns. One of the barns was where I would be held captive. I was used for rituals a lot. So I would be shackled in this barn before being led out. Rituals there were, I think, the extreme ritual process of satanic ritual abuse. The houses, not mock-ups, probably a bit of, you know, not the best phrase to use, but they weren't as intense with how detailed.
Jon Wedger he was genuinely a police officer, a fairly junior detective as far as I can tell, and he's one of these self-styled whistleblowers. Now, it's important to realise that a lot of these people are involved in whistleblowing, calling out unorthodox or illegal practices. Just because they do it, they're not above reproach. I mean, there was a former MI5 spy a while back, bloke named I forgot his name now. This is embarrassing. Adam, was it Ali Machin and him, whistleblowers. It was David Shaler, yeah, David Shaler, yeah. How could I forget? And Ali Machin. They both worked for MI5. No doubt about that. But they made allegations which go far beyond their actual knowledge. There's a very good video which I put on the Internet Archive about a former FBI agent, Ted Gunderson, who at one point could have been doing Jim Comey's job. It's called Death of a Public Paranoid. It's a lecture by Julian Greaves of the Satanic Temple. Don't be put off by the name Satanic Temple. Like, nothing to do with Satan. It's an atheist group. They campaign against sort of religious influence on the Constitution and stuff. But it's an excellent video. Ted Gunderson was a senior FBI operative, a senior FBI agent, and he started peddling with stuff about satanic conspiracies. Wedger is much lower down the food chain. He's appeared with Sean Atwood, who he's got quite a large following on YouTube. Basically, these people are peddling rubbish and lies, and they know. Well, Wedger, I don't know how genuine. I mean, he's peddling a lot of stuff he knows to be false, but I've no doubt he believes a lot of this garbage as well. Atwood, I don't think he believes any of it. You know, it's entertainment for him, and it leads to destroyed lives. A lot of the women and some of the men as well who involved in the rape crisis and the movement, the rape crisis network, the sexual grievance industry, they believe the most fantastic rubbish about not just that rape is you know, virtually every woman is raped or seriously sexually assaulted in a lifetime, but there's a vast conspiracy out there, and the police are part of it. So if the police investigate an allegation of rape or grooming and they find no evidence, and they report it, then as a cover-up, can't be anything but a cover-up. two cases on the timeline to look out for. The Holly Gregg case, that was in Scotland, although it morphed to the rest of England and the whole of the world. And the Hampstead satanic abuse case, I have a tentative connection with that because Sabine McNeil, who's currently serving a 9-year sentence for harassing innocent women, I knew her, and she's a woman with a stratospheric IQ and no common sense at all, and she was taken in by this rubbish and started. I mean, it's all garbage. Wedger, though, he's with some woman who I don't know how sincere she is. She's obviously either deranged or simply seeking attention. Now, you know, if this fantastic conspiracy did exist, it would have been unearthed. We saw with the Operation Yew Tree, and then what followed on from that, the posthumous witch hunt of Edward Heath, the witch hunt and then posthumous witch hunt of Leon Britton. Just the Elm Guest House scandal. Well, there was an Elm Guest House, and it was used by homosexuals, but nothing. The idea that young boys were tortured there and raped and bucketed and murdered is just complete nonsense. But these people, they're making a living out of it, and there's all the gullibles out there. Of course, what it is nobody trusts the government, and so if the government denies something, it must be lying, you know, and these people go against the government. It's just absolutely ludicrous. But these people do a lot of damage. Sabine McNeil she's 75 years old now. She's probably going to spend the rest of her life in prison, or well, I mean, even if she gets out, she's going to be 80, and it's what they've done to her, and what she did to these women because she swallowed all this garbage. It's just absolutely horrendous. I don't believe a word that people like Wedger say. Wedger doesn't sound quite so credible when you listen to him for a while, but a lot of the time you hear them and they do sound credible, because they'll take some elements they'll take something truthful, and then they'll meld it with all sorts of rubbish. For example, there have been paedophile rings in this country. I mean, there was if you look up the case of Sidney Cook, and there was Peter Wrighton, who was an establishment paedophile who protected another paedophile, Charles Napier. The BBC did a fantastic documentary on that in 1995. I think it was 1995. So, I mean, there are some horrible people out there, but they'll take this and then they're roping Prince Andrew or Prince Charles, even the Queen herself. There's some nutter who believes, more than one nutter who believes that when the Queen visited Canada back in the 1960s, that 10 kids disappeared or something, and she was involved in it. So don't be taken in by the likes of Jon Wedger. I hate to say always go to the police first, but you know, the police know how to carry out investigations when they're not trawling for victims. That's something else you should look up, trawling. But you'll find a paper trail, a trail of evidence. And the United States, of course, where, I mean, here we have reporting on all manner of criminal cases is very restrictive. In the United States, the police and the authorities, they release enormous tranches of material. So you'll find, for example, the Gacy case, or the Dean Call, who was a a homosexual murder of kids. You'll find all sorts of documentation there, and you'll also find where there have been fakes, like the McMartin case and the witch hunts of the 1980s and later of preschools, nurseries as we call them, and the Kelly Michaels case. You'll find that there's a lot of information in the public domain, but if you're going to get your information about rape allegations from the internet, make sure it comes at least from an official source, not from nutters like Jon Wedger, who I don't know why he left the police. Almost certainly under a cloud, but he claims he was forced out. But if you believe that, you believe anything. Okay, that's about all I've got for this edition. Hopefully Justin Bieber will shut up this woman, or expose her for the attention-seeking little cunt she is. I've made some. There's been a few cases in the news recently, which I've added some more. I haven't been adding a lot to the False Hope timeline, but I have added a few. There's some interesting cases live at the moment. There's this Barrow case, which probably won't be dealt with by the trial till next year. It looks like it's a fake allegation. The Cyprus case hasn't gone to appeal yet. I probably won't include that in the database even if she loses her appeal, because it's sort of horrible, these sort of gangbang situations. I don't include everything in the database. I found another one recently, 3 or 4 days ago, of some a 16-year-old girl took on a rugby team and then she cried rape. Well, I'm not including that. I think the football team in I think it was in the Pacific Northwest. It's probably not biased, but I always liked a bit of romance with my sex. So the idea of blokes going through some slag or consensually, it's just horrible. Some of them deserve everything they get. But there was an interesting case from South Africa of a woman who cried rape, and there's another one of a female prison officer, which she cried rape. And there's another case I found today in the Basingstoke press of a woman who had a fling with a teenager. And she didn't just cry rape, but actually accused him of making her pregnant. Also, people do such insane things. I did bad things when I was younger, but nothing sexual. We all do, I suppose. But when you get to my age, you look back, you see how insane some of it really is. But there are limits. There are absolute limits. There are actual limits. The only other thing I will say is there's been a renewed push in Scotland to. I wrote an article about this actually. You'll find it on the Duran about the new Scottish sexual offences bill. They're pushing. Well, they've already got the facility now for women who they can have a medical examination and then report the alleged crime up to a year later, which is a recipe for injustice, as I've pointed out. So anyways, there's not an awful lot going on at the moment apart from the Ghislaine Maxwell case. And there are other things, of course, statues falling all over the world, these lunatics. I'll probably do another update maybe next month. I might also see if I can sort out. We've got Zoom now, and there's, I think, Google as well as Facebook have got systems for holding live hangouts multi-way. So I might give that a try with the next Full Slope Timeline hangout. So anyway, please check out the International Full Slope Timeline. If you can, there's also a donate donate link, which you well, I don't know, it's up to you, but I've got PayPal as well. But the timeline will be on the online for probably for the next 2 years at least, depending on what happens to me. And finally, very finally, if you find any cases, especially in foreign languages, Polish or Afghan or Korean, something I'm not likely to have, please send me details, scans, and I will add them to the database as I see fit.